GateDrop Podcast. GateDrop.com, giving you the jump in motocross news.
Hello and welcome to the GateDrop.com podcast. I'm Jonathan McCready and with me is Andy McKinstry, and we're going to talk about round 2 of the AMS Supercross Championship in Oakland, California. And Andy, the racing wasn't on the level of Anaheim 1 in terms of carnage and disaster, but in terms of surprises, it was definitely up there. Jason Anderson taking the race win, Ken Roczen crashing with his teammate in qualifying, and then again in the night show, just himself this time he took out. But a difficult day for Honda and a great day for Jason Anderson.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, the racing didn't live up to the racing the week before day one. But in terms of the results, it couldn't really went much better. All the heavy hitters that struggled at A1 were at the top of the results at the second round. All the heavy hitters from A1 basically all decided to get really bad starts and let them other guys in. So the championship set up lovely now. I think there's 10 points between the top 9 riders, and then you've got Dylan Ferrandis not far behind either. So it's fascinating as regard the championship battles. But I have to say, Jason Anderson for me has been a very big surprise. I didn't expect this really. So it's good to see him riding at the front again. And if it wasn't for that takeout, he'd definitely have the red plate.
Yeah, I think I expected him to be decent, but I was thinking more top 5, 6, maybe a podium kind of level start of this year with sort of decent starts. But he's had decent starts, and probably, as you say, if it wasn't for that Barcia crash, he's probably been the best rider in the class so far. Was looking very likely he was going to get a podium at round 1, and he's obviously got the win there at round 2. And he actually said in the press conference he didn't even know Aaron Plessinger was that close behind him a while into the race, and then he looked around and realised Plessinger was behind him and it wasn't Justin Barcia in second. So he focused down again and tried to up his pace to get a bit of a gap. So I think that's maybe an indication into how relaxed maybe he is. He's not riding tense, he's riding loose, which would indicate he's comfortable with the bike and comfortable with leading races again. His first win since 2018. We know what he did there. He won the championship. So Jason Anderson, we might just have to put him into a title contender now, although whenever you look at the points, there's 10 points, I think it is, between the top 9. So there's a lot of riders thinking they're title contenders, and you could probably add Dylan Ferrandis into that, although he's 11th, 20-odd points back, but his speed should put him there. So if you want to kind of round it up or down, you're kind of looking at 10 riders who probably think they could be champion this year. Nobody's really dominated so far. So as you said, for the results, the racing maybe wasn't as good as it was in the first round, but results-wise, it's kind of shuffled the pack of cards, and it makes the round 3 pretty fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. And anybody that's had one bad round has been able to rectify it at the other bad round. So in terms of speed, I think all the top 9 plus Ferrandis are all probably happy with the speed that they have and will now think that they can win races. So it's just a matter of being consistent and getting good starts and trying to win. But yeah, like you said, the championship is set up lovely after 2 rounds, but usually the cream does rise to the top. So it'll be interesting to see as the championship continues who these riders are going to be consistently in the top 3 every week. But it was quite an interesting one because the heavy hitters from A1 did all get bad starts. So it'll be interesting to see, what they'll do when they do get the good starts, if they can do what they've done in A1 again. But it was certainly interesting, and it's set up lovely. You have to say though, Ken Roczen's weakness sort of came to light again. He puts himself in such a good position, and out of all the heavy hitters who got bad starts, he worked his way into 5th and was actually looking okay if you looked at the names ahead of him, and then one crash, ending up 13th, probably in a bit of pain. But obviously he's still 5th in the championship and only 6 points off. But things like that is exactly what's cost him this championship in the past. So he needs to try and cut those errors out.
I think the interesting thing about Ken is that both he and Chase Sexton publicly said in the press release that they weren't comfortable in the whoops. So to me, that would indicate it's maybe more of a bike settings issue if both riders weren't feeling completely at home. Now, how much was that to do with the initial crash and confidence and this and that? But it looks like they might be searching for bike setup there in the whoops, at least the way the whoops are this year. Ken mentioned actually on Steve Mavis' Pulp MX show that he lost a lot of riding time due to illness in December. And maybe we were starting to see that a wee bit just with regard to that setup and comfort. I don't think he got to fine-tune things as much as he wanted coming into the season. Maybe that was a bit of an indication there last weekend. Round 3 for me, but quite interesting because he'll have been riding and training again as usual the last 2 or 3 weeks, obviously. Will he find a better direction with the bike in terms of comfort round after round from now on? Chase Sexton looks like he's searching a wee bit as well. Other than that, starts-wise, the two Hondas have been on point. They've got 2 of the best average starts overall of the first 2 rounds. For Supercross, obviously, especially this year, that's important. But if you're still going to have to be good through the whoops. So they've a wee bit of catching up to do there. In contrast, you would say Yamaha the opposite. They seem to be good on the track. Eli Tomac definitely took a step forward this week. Fastest in practice. Dylan Ferranda second fastest. Qualifying, I should say. But again, the starts let both riders down pretty big time. Speed-wise on the track, I think in the race, Tomac was better again. He got up to 4th. At one point, it looked like he might get 3rd, but with all this carnage and results flip-flopping, Tomac's actually looking pretty good in the championship now. 6th place on the same points as Ken Roxon after going 6-4 on the 2 rounds so far. And to me, it looks like he's starting to build confidence. I think that was a big week for him. Pace-wise, comfort-wise on the bike, it's just the starts basically for him, I think, at the minute. Dylan Ferrand is even more so. His pace was probably better than Tomac at round 1. You could argue maybe better again in the main event at round 2, but the starts are just killing Dylan at the minute. And then he said, I think he made a mistake again when he was trying to get into that top 5. But whenever you put yourself on the back foot, you're having to push that wee bit more, so mistakes are probably more likely to occur. So for the star guys, pace, progress, starts still need work. So again, I'm sure they're going to be getting the start gates out this week because that looks to be the missing piece now just for that team.
Yeah, well, after the first round, Tomac was the most disappointing out of all the big guys because speed-wise he got smoked and actually the result looked better than what it was. So I think coming into the second round, he would have been motivated to have a much better weekend. And out of all the top guys, he probably needed the most to help the confidence. So, like you said, he rode well through the pack after a bad start to get up to 4th. So, he can put the disappointment of A1 behind him now and build on that and look to get on the podium or even a win as soon as possible. And yeah, Dylan again, starts. That's just letting this guy down. I think he probably passed the most riders the weekend. And but the good thing for him at least is he was able to keep it on 2 wheels this time and come home in 6th, which is a solid result considering the start. And yeah, if he just needs to get out of that gate better, and there's no doubt that he'll be in the top 5 as soon as possible, as soon as he fixes those errors out of the gate, really. But after A1, I do believe he worked on his starts, and whatever he was doing didn't really work. So hopefully they've got another plan up their sleeve.
And statistically, Dylan Ferrand, that's out of the top 13 riders in the championship, has the worst starting average, 13.5. I don't know if he can come 13th and a half out of turn 1, but he's managed to do that. So Ferrandis, like we said with Tomac, it's clear, it's just starts. I think it would be nice to see those guys at the front just to see what they could do with a clear track. Talking of good starts, Adam Cincerillo has the best start average, 2nd. Again, he impressed me so much. It's getting to the point he led 3 laps and he kept the pace pretty good as well. And it's getting to the point that he got 12th. So he's at 11th and a 12th. And it's almost at the point where, although that's really good and he's maybe surprising himself with the results he's able to get with that shoulder, he's got to be thinking that he might have the red plate or at least be somewhere close, say even 2 podiums, if he was healthy, because his speed with the shoulder and being off the bike for the last couple of weeks prior to Anaheim 1 would indicate that he has everything. At the minute, he's got the starts, he's got the speed, he just doesn't have a good shoulder. And with the way everything's going this year, if he'd been healthy, he might have been the guy up with Anderson and Barsha at the front of this championship.
It's certainly a possibility, although what I would say is when you're riding with an injury like Adam is, he knows whenever he's leading, he's not going to be able to stay there. He knows when it hits the halfway mark that he's going to fade and he's going to drop down the leaderboard. So if he was fully healthy, he might have a bit more pressure because, he'd be fully expecting himself to stay and battle for the win. So it's hard to say, but obviously the speed looks really good and he's impressing me too. Although the only issue is do you think it'd be better maybe taking a couple of weeks off now, because he's riding and it's probably not going to get any better soon, and he's going to prolong the injury? Whereas if he takes a couple of weeks off, it might heal a bit quicker, and then he might be able to last longer in a race potentially.
I think
I think he actually faded quicker this week than he did in A1, to be honest.
I think at the minute, because the points are so mixed up, he's probably lost less points getting 11th and 12th than he would most years. So for me, he's on 24, 23 points. He's actually just a point or two behind Dylan Ferrandis somehow, on less than 20 points off the lead. I think on a normal year, yeah, that might be an option. But if everybody's going to keep getting top threes and then around top tens, he might just keep going. The other aspect, of course, too, of the what could have been scenario is maybe because he has the shoulder, he's not pushing right on the edge like he has in the past. And that's maybe keeping him where he looked like he had the pacers before. He might have got impatient, pushed for the win and went down anyway. So you have that angle. But the other side of that is this is maybe a difficult way of learning how to get that balance, because he can't push the edge at the minute. And maybe when he comes back to full fitness, he'll have got that balance spot on, and that could be problems for everyone else, but good for him if he learns to just when to push and when not to push. But certainly at the minute, in the context of his situation, his race performances have been super impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. You can only credit the guy. You know, he's fighting through the pain there, and I mean, for half the races, he's there. It's just the second half of the races he seems to be struggling, and there's not an awful lot he can do about it. My only concern is when's he gonna, when's he going to improve on the injury side of things? It's a difficult one. Yeah, like you said, on a normal year, it'd be done now, but because of the inconsistent results, let's say, he's still not too far off. But the only issue is, it's going to be like this for the next couple of weeks at least, you would imagine. The good thing is he's getting good starts, because otherwise the results would probably be worse and he'd be dropping back further. But the fact that he's putting himself in good positions and he's able to finish 11th or 12th, it's if he does that the next couple of weeks, he's going to be out of contention. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing him riding, without any pain and riding like himself. And like you say, he's a rider that usually does ride on the edge. So it'll be interesting to see if after this he will have learned from those mistakes in the past and find that balance. Is your cat meowing in the background? No, it's not. Thought I heard a meow there. Anyway, moving on. Aaron Plessinger. That was a turnaround and a half from A1. He was asked in the press conference what that was down to, and he said basically his head wasn't in the right place at the first round. It didn't really feel like it was a race, and then he was kind of just riding, which is a little bizarre given the fact that it was his debut with KTM. Usually Anaheim 1's the place where everybody feels the pressure and gets the most hype, as we saw with all the carnage. But Aaron Plessinger's a bit different, and he actually went the complete opposite way I think every other rider in the track, and wasn't probably in the right headspace by the way he was talking. I think he's made changes to the bike as well. And all in all, he came in firing this week. Good start, great ride on his second ever podium. Alden Baker's going to be a lot happier this week with Aaron Plessinger than he was last week. And it looks to me like this could be sustainable now for Aaron Plessinger. He looked a lot happier and he looked very comfortable up there. Yeah, it was a very good result for Plessinger, and one that he needed after the disappointment of A1. A lot of hype, obviously, after signing for KTM, and he didn't really live up to it at the opening round. But the second round, he got a good start, and he was able to stay at the front. Whilst he was impressive, he was sort of helped with a lot of the top guys getting bad starts. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do at the future races. A, he needs to keep getting those good starts, and B, if he'll be able to stay with those other guys when they get the starts as well. As we know, Supercross, a lot of it is down to positioning yourself well the first couple of laps. So it'll be interesting to see. But it was nice to see him get only a second 450 podium. And teammate Cooper Webb, this was a very un-Cooper Webb-like performance. A bad start and only came through slightly. He was almost more like Eli Tomac was the week before. Lap times were never... Well, actually, the qualifying lap times were really good, but in the racing, it actually worked in the opposite way of what it usually does. In the races, he never really had that spark. Come to find out later, he had a cold and he was feeling under the weather, which actually does explain quite a lot, because he had been talking about previously after Anaheim 1, he was going to make changes to the bike to try and actually go faster and feel more comfortable. And the races this weekend looked like the opposite happened. So hopefully it is just illness, and Cooper is still comfortable on the bike and will still be going back to the old Cooper Webb.
but definitely a bit of a head-scratching ride at the time. My only disappointment from a Marvin Musquin perspective was they got in a bit of a duel again, and Cooper Webb was still able to beat him in the last few laps. You would think Marvin would have been able to get the edge there. It seems Cooper's always able to fight his way past Marvin. He just has that wee bit extra when he needs it. And if Marvin Musquin wants to contend for this title, you would think he would have to be able to get the better of Cooper Webb on a night like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's probably a bit of Musquin being a little bit too nice to his teammate, as he's been like that pretty much all his career. He's a nice guy and he's not too aggressive, apart from A1, ironically.
Feast or famine.
Yeah, I thought Webb was all right under the circumstances. I mean, he got a bad start, and he doesn't usually get bad starts, so he's not. That's something he's probably not used to, having to come through the pack. But he came up okay. I mean, I think only one rider passed him, which is Ferrandis, and he didn't really lose too much time to Stewart either. So it was okay. Nothing spectacular, but not a complete disaster either. Still third in the championship and 3 points off. So I think he would have took that coming into the season. The thing about Webb is he needs to position himself in the top 5 at the beginning, and if he does that, he'll be there at the end. And especially in the second half of the races, that's where he usually shows his best. And I think that's in Oakland, we were sort of maybe waiting for that, but he never showed what he usually does in the second half of the race. Musquin will probably be disappointed with 8th after a solid start to the season. So work for him to do this week as well.
And Webb, incidentally, he's just 3 points off the lead. So as you say, overall, it was another situation of damage limitation, and he's actually right there in the championship ahead of Ken Roxon and Eli Tomac. Ken Roxon is only 3 points behind Webb. He's in 36, as is Eli Tomac. And your leader is Justin Barcia. 2 third places. The Gascast rider takes the red plate. Go on, second and third, was it? And he takes the red plate anyway into round 3. This, for me, might be Justin's best year of winning, of his chances if he actually wants to win this title. He's been consistent. Now, you wonder if that aggressive riding against Anderson might at some point go against him in terms of a payback. Right now, they all seem pretty friendly and everything's going okay. But Barcia has a 3-point lead in the championship. He's been the most consistent. He's had decent starts. If he's going to do it any year, it's probably going to have to be this year, you would imagine, because of the carnage that's going on. The door's slightly open for him so far, and you would imagine Gas are got to be buzzing at the minute. He hasn't won a race yet, but if you get consistent podiums and top 5s this year, as long as somebody like Eli Tomac doesn't start reeling off wins, that could be what it takes to get this title.
Well, we'll have to see. We're only 2 races in. Barcia typically does start the season in a good fashion. So the challenge for him is if he can maintain these levels. I do certainly see him for the first half of the season being a contender, but in the past, the second half is where maybe he's faded and hasn't been able to replicate the same form from the first half of the season. So it will be interesting to see, but certainly couldn't have asked for a better start to the season. I know he does usually win the opening rounds, but I think Ayla, the way he started these first 2 rounds and having the red plate, I think he'd pick that over winning the first round and then maybe binning it the second week or whatever. So yeah, the challenge for him is to stay this consistent, and if he does, he should be there right at the end of the year. But we'll see if he can do it.
Malcolm Stewart, average, but in a good way. He didn't do anything silly. He's still got a good points overall total. He's still going to think he's there, but perhaps he just didn't have that extra bit that he had at A1 in terms of raw speed. But like all of these guys, starts and consistency matters. And I think, as I alluded to earlier, nobody's really established themselves as the main guy, and that gives everyone else confidence, because everyone, or most of the riders in the top 10 have had their moments this year of raw speed or good qualifying. And at this point, maybe coming into round 3, there's the odd one dropping off. They start thinking it isn't going to be my year, but I don't think that's happened for anyone that came into the season with realistic aspirations to podium or win races or even go for the title. That top 10, all those factory guys, maybe even Adam Cianciarulo, actually, if you think about it, he's got that shoulder, but he's usually pretty confident. There's so many guys still believe they can, I'm sure, win this title. And that's probably the most exciting part of the season so far. Everyone still believes they have a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to touch on Malcolm, yeah, a solid day again. And that's sort of what he needs to do. Just keep being consistent, try and get in that top 5 as much as he can. If it wasn't for that takeout, it'd definitely be higher up in the championship standings. But it is what it is. A solid start to the season, and I think he can be happy with his riding. Yeah, like I touched on at the start. I mean, the top 10 plus the top 10 definitely all still believe that they have a chance. And whilst Ferrandis is maybe too far down at the stage, he will believe he still can if he can just get out of that gate. So
Yeah.
I don't think anybody will have thought that they've lost the championship yet. And because some of them have had two consistent rounds and been towards the front, or B, they've had at least one good race at the front, they'll all be happy with their speed. So now it's just about trying to be consistent and always at the front. But as we see with Supercross, it's all about positioning yourself, getting out of that gate. So it's going to be an interesting one this weekend as well.
And finally, on the 450 class, Alden Baker, is he working his magic again with Aaron Plessinger and Malcolm Stewart? Obviously, Plessinger had that dip, as I said, round one. But after the start to his day and not being in the right frame of mind, as he said himself, he still got a ninth. In the context of this season so far, that's actually not too bad whenever you can back it up with a second place. Malcolm Stewart's been solid both races. Are these two up on their levels with Alden Baker, do you think?
Possibly, but I do still think that there's more to it than just Alden Baker. Obviously, Factory KTM is a very good ride to have in America. And before last year, Plessinger's 450 career wasn't looking too good. Now, thankfully, Star came in and helped him at Yamaha, so that he had at least one good year under his belt, and this probably got him this ride. I still think KTM is probably stronger than Yamaha 450s at the moment, and obviously because even though Star done a great job, they're still haven't got the experience of running a 450 team. So Plessinger, I think he's benefiting not only from Alden Baker, but the factory KTM, Da Costa and Harrison know what they're doing there as well. So I think it's a good package. And obviously Malcolm Stewart, he's been looking for a big ride like this his whole career. So it's a perfect timing for him. So not only is it the Alden Baker working his magic, but I feel like both riders are benefiting from the rides that they've got for this year as well.
Yeah, it was certainly something to keep an eye on for the next few rounds to see if the level that these two are riding with currently can be sustained, and if they can create some sort of title challenge here against a plethora of riders who all think this could be their year. Moving on to the 250 class, and certainly if the 450 class is the case of no one's established themselves to be the main guy yet or the fastest guy, the opposite is true in the 250 West, because Christian Craig is the main guy and he's the fastest guy, he's the dominant guy. And the other riders are going to have to find some speed in the practice weeks that could even get close to Christian Craig, because at the minute he's making things look pretty easy.
Yeah, well, that's just it. He's in a class on his own there at the moment, speed-wise, and he's able to position himself well on the moto. So he's going to be hard to stop. I think the only guy, well, based off the first two rounds, I think the only guy that has half a chance is possibly Hunter Lawrence. Yeah. Although Moseyman coming into it expected a little bit more from him this season. Don't think A1 was necessarily his fault, but for him not to have a podium 2 rounds in, I would still say is slightly disappointing, because I expected him to be the next big guy. But at the minute, it's looking like Hunter is that guy, and I would like to see Hunter get a start along with Craig, even though I still think Craig will beat him. He's got more Supercross experience, and he looks a lot more comfortable. But what I would say is if Lawrence can get the starts and even follow him for 4, 5, 6 laps, see what Craig is doing, he should be able to learn from Craig. But it's all about getting that start. He might need 3 or 4 rounds in behind Craig at the start to learn to pick up what he's doing. But I think he's the guy that could do it, run it close at least, hopefully, in the future. But I don't see it happening anytime soon, barring a Craig disaster or a big crash or anything like that. Looks really, really strong at the moment.
Michael Mosiman does seem to have that speed, that if he did get away with Craig, or at least he got away ahead of Craig, which is maybe what everyone needs right now, Craig to start about 7th and one of them to get the whole shot. Mosiman's still making these small mistakes, and that would be your concern with him. He's already dropped a lot of points. I don't think the speed's actually the problem there. It's just some mistakes. Hunter Lawrence starts haven't been the greatest, but he's come through strong. And as you say, at the minute, all things together, Hunter looks like the biggest threat to Christian, but Christian Craig's getting the starts. He's got superior whip speed. He looks like he's a better flow. The only maybe saving grace for Hunter Lawrence is that he isn't afraid to put a wheel in there, and that might ruffle Craig's feathers, put him under a wee bit of pressure. And historically, Craig under pressure hasn't maybe been as good as he could have been. That might be everyone else's only hope at the minute, is hope Craig makes a mistake by himself, or trying to create a situation that he does make a mistake in, because otherwise you let him get a good start. He had to battle Joe Shimoda a wee bit at the start of this one, and it was Joe that made the mistake, and then he done a pretty perfect front flip actually in the whoops, which would have got him a lot of style points in freestyle, but got him less points in the race because he ended up 7th. Again, Joe Shimoda is another guy that you would think he's actually really smooth and doesn't make mistakes, but is Christian putting the pressure on because he's setting the pace that high at the minute?
Yeah, I was actually going to bring Joe Shimoda up. I mean, we were both very impressed by him last year.
Yeah.
And one thing that was so impressive about him last year is he very rarely made any mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're only 2 rounds into this year and already he's eating dirt. You think that's maybe down to more pressure of being the main man in the Kawasaki 250 team. And yeah, I think so as well. Because last year he's
coming in pretty much. He has to perform now this year. You know, he's done his learning year, and this is that's challenge for the title year. But Greg's lifted the bar, and obviously in around Shimoda's level, you've got his teammate. You have Hunter Lawrence, you have Michael Mosman if he can stay off the ground. You have Vince Freeze kind of running a 10-pin bowling ball through everyone if he can. If he gets a good start, which doesn't make anyone relaxed, not even Christian Craig actually. So you have all these other things going on as well, and I think in the back of Joe's mind, it's, I'm too smooth. I need to try and ride the edge a wee bit. Seth Hammaker actually said he needs to find that balance as well in the press conference. So I think there's a lot going on with these younger riders. You know, Hunter Lawrence is a bit older, 22 maybe at the minute, but this is only his second year of Supercross experience too. So Craig has the advantage in experience. He's probably got the advantage in natural Supercross talent as well, and he maybe has the best bike. So he should obviously win this championship in theory, but right now he's doing it in practice. And I actually asked him in the press conference, would he consider riding the 450 East Coast as it would be? I've seen that years ago, more in the 90s. The top 125 riders would ride the bigger bike on the opposite coast, but Craig said he actually would like to. He's asked Star Yamaha if he could in the off season, but I think that's not going to look too likely now. He says it would be risky. You know, you could maybe throw away the championship, but the form Christian's Craig is in, give him a start in the 450, which he probably suits better to ride, and he could be an exciting addition to that class too. He is for moving up next year on a 450, so this looks like this is winter bus time for him on a 250 as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to see him on a 450. For me, I find it a bit of a shame he's not riding in the 450 class this year, but it is what it is. It is tough for those guys he's racing against in the 250 class because, like you said, he's so experienced. You know, it's going to take something really for him to throw this away at this stage because he looks that much superior to them all. But, you know, those guys can use him as a reference now and try and improve from him. Just another point on Shimoda is I feel like last year he would have maybe been happy with running with Craig for maybe 2 or 3 laps and, you know, just settle for a 3rd and a 4th. But I feel like this year now, in the back of his head, he's thinking, I want to win one of these, you know, or try and even be a championship contender. So, you know, he's not content anymore, and that might lead to more crashes. Hope not for his sake, because I feel like the job he done last year was really, really good. So hopefully he can build on that and just be consistent in the top 3 or 4. And I still think that would be a good season for him. I feel like it's not really his fault he's in the position that he is and being the main guy at Kawasaki now.
Yeah, it's maybe a learning year in a different way for Joe Shimoda to come in with pressure and expectation. He probably hasn't had that before. So again, it'll be interesting to keep a look on his progress to see if he can kind of overcome that. And I think a lot of those guys are in that same boat. And as I say, Craig's probably putting the pressure on them as well because he's getting the championship lead extended and he's got the pace on them. So round 3 here, they're going to have to do something really to try and interrupt his flow. But Andy, thanks for your input again, your views. And as I mentioned, that 450 class, it's partly worth predicting who's going to win round 3. But who's your money on?
Well, good question. I'll be mad and say Malcolm Stewart. Don't ask me why, because I can't answer. But why? Who's your money on? Because I can't answer. I just told you that.
But there has to be some thought process behind it.
Not really. Just being radical, you know.
I'm going Eli Tomac.
I was very close to saying him, and then I went flip it. I'll just put Stewart's name out there for the crack.
So it won't be any of those two.
Yeah, probably not. No.
We'll see who wins, and we'll discuss that next week. Thanks everyone for listening, guys.